Alright guys, welcome to Unit 5, Cycle 1, Acquire 4. Today we're going to be learning about quadratic transformations equations. Our learning target today is I can identify and create transformed quadratic functions. Okay, so as a review, right, we have different rules for different kinds of transformations. So the first type is if you're multiplying a number by the function, right? So if you're multiplying it outside the function, outside the parentheses, right, let's call it A. But if you're multiplying inside the parentheses, like right next to the X, that'd be B. But in both cases, right, if that number is greater than 1, it's going to be steeper. And if it's less than 1, it's going to be less steep. It's going to be steeper, or it's going to be less steep. Okay, but same rule applies for both of them. Now, if you have a negative number, right, let's say the negative number is outside of the function. Well, in that case, you would have a reflection. You have a negative number, just a negative symbol. So if your function is becoming negative, then it would be a reflection. On the other hand, if the minus sign, if the subtraction sign is inside the parentheses, so right next to the X, that nothing happens. That's actually nothing. It's not a reflection. That is just nothing. Okay, and then finally, if you have subtraction or addition, right, you can have that either inside the parentheses, like right here, so minus C inside the parentheses, or plus D. So typically, when it's inside parentheses, we just call it C, and then or outside the parentheses, we call it D. Specifically, inside the parentheses, if you are subtracting or adding inside parentheses, if it's a subtraction sign, this is going to be a shift to the right. So inside parentheses is going from right to left. So a plus C would logically be a shift to the left. It's backwards from what you would think. Okay, if it's a minus C or a plus C, that's what creates the different shift. Now, if it's outside the parentheses, if it's a plus D, it's going to be a shift up. And this is more logical. Minus D would be a shift down. Okay, this should already look familiar from the last lesson. Just remember, if it's inside the parentheses, you're shifting right and left, and it's kind of backwards from what you would think. A subtraction symbol you'd think would be left, but it's actually right. An addition symbol you'd think would be right, but it's actually left. These are more logical. Plus is up, minus is down. Okay? Now, let's take a look at a few examples. It says, write the equation of the quadratic function after the given transformation from the parent function. So as a reminder, your parent function looks like this. F of x equals x squared. Your parent function for quadratics, the function that everything else is based off of, the most basic function is f of x equals x squared. So we're going to write all of these based on the idea that that's our basic function. Right? So let's take a look at number 1. It says we have a shift up. Well, I'm going to look up here at my table, and I'm going to try to find where shift up is, where it says f of x plus d. So I'm going to use that rule. F of x, and it's going to be plus something, plus d. And that something is going to be 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write f of x equals, and then what is f of x? X squared. Right? I'm going to write x squared. And then all that's changing is this shift up 4. So I'm going to add 4. And that's my new equation. F of x equals x squared plus 4. So if I want to shift my graph up 4, all I need to do is add 4 to x squared. Okay, now I shift left, we're going to look right here. In this case, something's going to happen inside the parentheses. X minus c. Right? So if it's a shift left, specifically I need a plus sign. F of x plus c. And plus c is going to be 2. So what this is going to look like, I'm always going to start off with f of x equals, and then in these parentheses, right, I'm going to put x, and then this is going to be plus 2, because that's my number, plus 2. And all of that is still going to be squared. Okay, so here my plus 4 was outside my parentheses, so I didn't have to do anything right next to the x. But this time it's inside the parentheses because it's to the left. So it'd be plus 2 then squared. Okay, move on to the next one. It says less steep by a factor of a equals 1/6. So if you look at this one, I'm still going to start off with f of x, right? But less steep by a factor of a, I need to put an a out in front. So whatever my a is, I need to multiply f of x by that. So I would still start off with f of x equals, and it's going to be x squared, right? That's still my parent function. That's my normal parent function, but what I need to do is multiply it by a, which my a is 1/6. Right? So if it's less steep by a factor of a equals 1/6, that's what it's going to look like. Okay, now what if it's less steep by a factor of b equals 1/6? Less steep by a factor of b equals 1/6. Right? In this case, I'm going to use this formula. So I would do f of b. Okay. So in this case, we're still going to start off with f of x equals, but this time we're going to have something in parentheses. So if you look, what I just wrote is still the parent function. Right? All I need to do is put 1/6 in front of that x. So I'm going to write x over here and put 1/6 in front of that x. Okay, so it's very similar to what I just wrote over here, except this one, the 1/6 is inside the parentheses. This one is outside. Okay, those are very similar. Now, number 5, it says a shift down. Okay, it says a shift down 10. So I'm going to go up here and look. Okay, f of x, it looks like I need to do minus d, which my d is 10. So just like I did up here, I'm going to have f of x equals x squared. And then this time, since it's down, I'm going to do minus 10. Okay? 1 and 5 are very similar. I just did a shift up or a shift down. Okay, now let's try 6. It says a shift to the right 7. Right? So if I look specifically at my formula right here, I do f of x and then minus c. Because if I have a shift right, I'm going to do x minus c. Okay? So if you look at shift left 2, again, all my equations start with f of x equals. Okay, and I need to put this inside my parentheses. So I'm going to make some parentheses and put squared. X, and then minus c, so minus 7. So inside my parentheses, just like up here, is minus 7 squared. This was plus 2 because it was shift left. This is minus 7 means this shift right. Okay, let's keep going. Number 7, it says steeper by a factor of a equals 5. Steeper by a factor of a equals 5. Okay. Remember the equation we're using is this one. If I have a factor of a and it's steeper, I'm going to use this equation. So out in front of my function, I'm going to put a, whatever my a is. So if my function is f of x, my parent function is f of x equals x squared, what am I going to put out in front of x squared? 5. Right? Just like I did up here. 3 and 4 are very similar to 7 and 8. 1 and 2 are very similar to 5 and 6. These are very similar, and these are very similar. Right? Okay. Number 8. Steeper by a factor of b equals 5. So again, I'm going to look and see what rule I'm going to use. B, steeper. I'm going to use this equation. Do f of b, okay, b x, f of dx. Okay, so just like I did up here, I'm still going to make my parentheses. So I'm going to have f of x equals something squared. I just don't know what's in there yet. I know there's going to be an x, and before my x is going to be a 5 because that's my b. So again, 7 and 8 are very similar to each other, except 5 is inside the parentheses, 7 is not inside the parentheses, just like 3 and 4 were. Okay? Now number 9, it says a reflection. So I'm going to go back up here, and this is my formula. This is my rule. So I'm going to use negative f of x. Negative f of x. So I'm still going to write f of x equals x squared, right? That's my parent function. And all it's asking me to do is put a negative in front of x squared, in front of my function. Boom. So f of x equals negative x squared. Now finally, shift up 4, and then less steep by a factor of b equals 1/2. So it looks like we've got two things going on. We have a shift up of 4, but then we have a factor of b equals 1/2. So there's two things going on now. Okay? So let me write this one out. Put an arrow right here. This is what's going on in this one. Let's break it down. It says, first of all, I need a shift up 4, but then I need less steep by a factor of b equals 1/2. So I know I'm going to need to use less steep b, so I'm going to need to use f of bx. So I'm going to go ahead and write that one. F of b, right? F of bx. Okay, that's my less steep by a factor of 1/2. That's what that is. But then I also need a shift up 4. So I'm going to use this one, shift up 4. So plus d. Right? So let me scroll down so you see that. I used f of bx to get my less steep by a factor of 1/2. And then I did plus d to do a shift up 4. So I used 2 formulas on this one. Okay, now to write all that out, still going to start with f of x equals, I'm going to need parentheses. I'm going to have to square it. I'm going to have x right here. But now I just need to fill out, okay, what's b and what's d? Well, my b is 1/2, and my d is 4. Okay, so I know that looks like a lot, but if you just break it down into the 2 parts, you'll get there. Okay, let's take a look at another one that's kind of complicated. I shift left 7, and then less steep by a factor of a equals 1/3. Okay, again, I'm going to start off with f of x, always. But let's see what my formula would look like. If I have a shift left 7, right, that means that something's happening inside front parentheses up here, x plus c. But then if I have a factor of a equals 1/3, that means I'm doing something on the outside. So to write that formula, this is what I would write. I would have an a out in front, right, just like my formula says. And then inside my parentheses, f of x plus c. So x, and this would be plus c because I have a shift left. Look up here, a shift left is plus c. Shift left plus c. Shift left plus c. Okay, so that's what I need to create. Well, let's take it one by one. I'm going to have my a. What's my a? 1/3. Okay, then I'm going to write my f of x, right? I'm going to have parentheses squared, x, and then it's going to be plus c, so plus 7. Okay, so this 1/3 is out in front because it's less steep by a factor of a, and then this plus 7 is inside the parentheses. Okay, last one. It says a shift to the right 4, and then it's reflected. Okay, so my shift right 4 would simply be, I'll look up here, it would be x minus c. So I'd have x and then minus c. And all I have to do for reflection is I have to put a negative out in front of my function. So that's what I'm looking for on this one. So my final answer would be f of x equals, obviously, a negative, right? And I'm going to have parentheses squared, just like I've had parentheses squared right here, right here, right here, right here, all around. And then I'm going to write x minus whatever my c is, which my c corresponds to 4. Minus 4. Okay, so I know that's a lot, but the big thing you got to focus on is knowing how all these work, right? And you have to manipulate the parent function to do whatever this wants you to do. So if you have to multiply something on the inside or outside, if you have to put a negative sign, if you have to add or subtract, it's very specific to these rules on that table. Okay? Now, at the end, I want you to go ahead and write a few sentences about what you learned during this lesson. Okay, you guys got this. Good luck.